Hey, welcome back, everybody. So, today I wanted to talk about a topic that I think a lot of folks in manufacturing will relate to, but I think it spans so many other industries and facets of life in general. And it's about the paradox of efficiency. Now, typically, I like to write an article, post it before making a video about it, sort of explaining my thought pattern. But in this one, I was actually having quite a bit of time getting it all into concrete words, and I just felt more like verbally talking through what was kind of stirring in my head. And it's not, it's a topic that I know I'm not the first one to address. I think a lot of other folks tend to come from, non-traditional STEM backgrounds, but it doesn't mean that their ideas and thoughts on the matter are any less significant or valuable or relevant. Quite the contrary, in fact. One of those folks that I particularly liked was this gentleman by the name of Edward Tenner. He did a TED Talk, and basically it was about can we be too efficient, to the point that the efficiency seeking that we're aiming for is actually making whatever process or product we're trying to make be more efficient actually turn out to be less efficient. It's hard to sort of wrap your mind around a seemingly ethereal topic like efficiency, but from a manufacturing perspective, essentially, when we talk about optimization and efficiency, we're trying to create something with as little raw materials and financial investment as possible, to do it as quickly as possible with as little defect as possible and a high quality as possible and a very fast throughput. So it's important to sort of have that framework in mind. And as a engineer myself, the struggle I've come back and forth with time and time again is, to what means are we and ends are we pursuing optimization and efficiency? On one hand, it's very important that we optimize something so that it does in fact consume, less raw material, and that's a great thing for the environment because essentially we do not need to consume as much from the environment, less detrimental impact, but it doesn't necessarily capture the whole picture, right? We can extract as little raw material from our natural resources as possible, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the process overall that's required to extract that raw material, regardless of how small the quantity is, it doesn't mean that process is any less harmful. And a perfect example of this is electric vehicles. Now, I'm not a electric vehicle hater by any stretch of the imagination, but there is a high level of delusion in what applications electric vehicles can replace or potentially supplement and complement. And I think to completely dig into the idea that every transportation vehicle will be purely electric is outright absurd for very empirically objective and indisputable engineering facts. One, not the least of which being the capacity of an electric motor and how long you can keep it running before it runs into natural physical phenomena like overheating, and how much it takes to bring the heat down of an electric motor versus traditional work engines like diesel motors. And, I think for very long term travel, it just makes perfect sense that, diesel has always been and forever will be the method of choice, especially because it can also pull quite a bit of weight with very little consumption. Now, the thing that I want to address here specifically, though, is it's great that we're pursuing um, this idea of being more efficient and optimizing things as best as possible. We want to consume less. But for what purpose specifically are we trying to consume less? Is it so we can then continue consuming more in other areas? Or is it simply that we just try to limit our consumption overall on an individual level, me and you, as well as on a systemic level, talking about, companies, governments, etc. Is that the goal? Or again, is it simply efficiency for efficiency's sake to say, we made this breakthrough innovative technology that can, in fact, help reduce and does reduce raw material consumption, but it's nothing really more than just a proof of concept, similar to, contemporary art in art museums for the sake of art that truly doesn't have any deeper meaning, and it's just art for art's sake. It's nice to look at. Now, as a scientist, I can't stop my analytical mind, but the thing that I keep harkening back to is the core values that drive us as human beings is so important in topics like this because personally, the road I see for pursuing efficiency is ultimately to reduce not only the consumption of the particular thing we're improving on to make more efficient, but overall reducing consumption in every facet of our life with the end goal to implementing a system of deliberate fasting, which allows us the ability to allow our natural environment to heal over time. Farmers do this. Great examples of this are naturally occurring in nature are forest fires where the uh, the the soil is then allowed a time to regrow into a fertile landscape from the devastation that the fire wiping out the natural ecosystem, but allowing a proper sort of de-shedding of its skin, similar to what a snake does, as a natural healing cycle for new things to grow. However, consumption for the sake of consumption, regardless of how, you know, efficient we are at consuming, it is not a it is not a sustainable approach. And what do I mean by that? Sustainable, in my definition, is you can't keep doing it forever. There are finite raw materials out there. And so it's important, again, to have this critical discourse of to what end are we pursuing optimization and efficiency? Is it so that we can continue consuming the things that we are already consuming at the same rate, since we're now able to destroy less of our environment, we can make it last longer? Or are we doing the pursuit of efficiency so we don't destroy as much of our natural environment, and we make deliberate conscious efforts to fast from uh, raw material consumption overall? What does this look like in manufacturing, you might ask? And a perfect example of this is in the production of textiles like clothing, commercial clothing that you and I wear. There's many factories, some of which are run on human capital exclusively, others are run on machine capital. And the question, it begs the question then, how many clothes do we actually need to manufacture, right? Is there actually a legitimate need, uh, be it for survival, that is driving us to continue mass producing or even custom, discrete or potentially batch production of these clothes? Or are we just trying to produce as many clothes as possible with the end goal being profit over overall reduction in consumption, period? I have yet to see this blanket adoption of fasting. I think there are some organizations that truly understand, especially in manufacturing, you can't just produce 24/7, 365. In fact, it's actually far it's been empirically proven to be far less efficient to run at that, or at least try to run at that capacity. And it's actually far more efficient to have long-term scheduled planned downtime, not just for the sake of maintaining your existing capital and infrastructure, but also because there are natural lulls in not only where consumers desire certain products or services, but just generally innovation might occur, and those that were once needed and wanted are no longer needed or wanted now. Or overall, there's a more socially conscious effort to say, yes, we can make this thing and we can mass produce it, but look at the havoc it wreaks on our ecosystem. And essentially, continuing down this path of mass production is only going to serve in our creating our own self-destruction. And that's, again, I would ask if you're pursuing, I would ask the question again, are you pursuing efficiency to consume more, to continue consuming now that you have allowed yourself a technological breakthrough to destroy, have less of an environmental impact? Or are you doing it where you truly want to reduce the overall environmental impact that you're having, as well as having planned long-term downtime? And in the medical community, fasting, intermittent and long term, is actually a very healthy practice and is shown to have very positive impact on the body and increases longevity of life and quality of life overall. And the same holds true for natural ecosystems. It's important that we take this interconnected approach and tying in empirical, scientific, evidence-based clinical claims into the manufacturing industry as well as other facets of our life. And deliberate fasting accomplishes just that. Um, Cars are yet another great example of this. Do we really need to produce X amount of cars? And if we are relentlessly pursuing efficiency just for the sake of trying to sell more cars, even at a potentially lower cost, are we actually being more efficient and having a less detrimental impact on our environment than is empirically true? And the answer is no, you're not. The fact that you're continuing to make these many more cars, even if the amount of raw material you need now per car is lessened, you're still having an overall net negative impact. Scientists often talk about the same issue of this paradox of efficiency. And this is where linking, social psychology and neuroscience comes into play, where if you are going to pursue this path of, conscious, deliberate, long-term fasting in consumption, how do we achieve that and sustain that over the long term? And again, these other fields of science have proven that in order to do so, effectively, you need to help teach and instill pro-social values and morals, where people live by a concrete set of values where mutual collaboration is prioritized above all else. It is not to say that the individual is completely wiped out of the equation and somehow you're going to be absorbed in this massive group think. It's actually quite the opposite, because in order for your neighbors to be successful, you need to be successful as well. And in order for you to be successful, your neighbor needs to ensure that you are successful just as much as they are successful. And we see this again empirically to be valid with our primate ancestors, which if you look at the groups that have been studied that have done better than other chimpanzee communities, all of them have prioritized mutual collaboration and practice techniques like fasting in order to have less of an impact around their ecosystem. and they have been far better for it. They've been able to expand their numbers by all measurable metrics. They have been more successful, and it's something that we don't quite often relate in manufacturing, but it's very important that we recognize that efficiency just for the sake of efficiency and efficiency just for the sake of being able to continue consuming, even though you're consuming, even though you're destroying the impact just that little less, not thanks to some technological innovation, are not sustainable. There is, in fact, a finite point, and continuing past trying to continue past that point will only lead to assured self-destruction. And so I would hope that the next thing people naturally come to, the next question people naturally come to is, does it have to be this way, right? Does it have to be this way where we relentlessly pursue um, ongoing, continuing consumption, even though destroying the impact, we're destroying the environment just that much less because we've made a technological breakthrough? And the answer is no, it does not have to be this way. In fact, again, time and time again, we've seen empirically that factories that try to run, or even other businesses and other organizations like nonprofits that try to live by this motto of operate 24/7, 365, experience huge amounts of employee turnover, huge amounts of burnout, and actually are far less efficient than their counterparts who grant higher employee vacation time, other employee benefits like continuing education or paid maternity and paternity leave. And objectively, we know and we have known for decades that these folks, on an individual and a collective basis, do far better than those that do not have these support systems in place that deliberately stop uh, essentially, the act of consumption, because they recognize that they're not only destroying their own employees, but they're not serving the same customer base at a high level of quality that they were looking to achieve by operating 24/7, 365. It, it's at first glance, I can understand people's take on wanting to see it as very wishy-washy and sort of abstract and ethereal, but again, it's really not. That we have tangible, objective, empirical bits of evidence, and it's not scattered one-off studies. These are highly aggregated and agreed upon studies where we've shown long-term fasting to be the answer, as well as um, smaller amounts of consumption to lead to higher quality of life and a natural balance, not just within our ecosystem, but to have longer lives and be able to achieve the things that people want and need to achieve. And it also leads to other success metrics, namely lower poverty rates, primarily because a lot of the factors that go into resulting in poverty are more so socially uh, constructed, where these social decisions to continue operating in a 24/7, 365, relentless consumption manner of being actually lead to these negative outcomes. Let me see if there's anything else here that I might be missing. I think talked a little bit about this before, fellow mammals in the animal kingdom, right? Bears go on fasting. Even wild dogs, wolves, coyotes do the same thing. It's a technique they use not just for population control of the prey game around an ecosystem, but also within managing their own pack numbers, right? Because even though their survival instinct is to essentially reproduce and pass on their genetics. There is a sort of hardwired, hard-coded stop so that, they don't ultimately just wipe out every other animal, and, coyotes, wolves, wild dogs are then left to be the only animal in town. It's a very wonderful and interesting thing that nature has built in, and one of the toughest things with humans that we have to now psychologically reconcile with, as I've talked about this before, the drive for survival is no longer. It was at one point with our ancestors, but is no longer the primary motive for continuing to exist. Through many, many wonderful technological breakthroughs, you have individuals from all facets of life, folks with developmental disabilities, with other illnesses, folks that might have amputated limbs, still living a good quality of life, finding fulfillment in their lives by being partnered with somebody, having a family that loves them, and having a healthcare system that technologically can support them and allowing them to be reintegrated into communities that offer the social support networks as well, so they can participate in pro-social and fun and enjoyable activities rather than self-destructive activities. So we have vaccines. We have all sorts of assistive uh, technologies that allow people who don't have access to their legs to continue driving. And this essentially means the motive for human beings to exist is not survival anymore. All right, we've essentially conquered many of the natural phenomena that pretty much wipe out every other species thanks to our unique intelligence and many technological breakthroughs. And so, what does that mean now as we are uh, going into this moment in time where we're faced with organizations that are have already digitally transformed, which are very few, but ones that are continuing to digitally transform and are pursuing this noble goal of living, of existing as an organization by a set of values and being more conscientious and making more pro-social decisions that aren't just a very self-centered focus of essentially justifying your own existence, right? How do you and people need to reconcile psychologically, that we don't need to struggle for survival. We have supermarkets. There is no longer a need to hunt. We have industrial agriculture. Um, and these are all very important questions. I'm not saying I have the answers to all of them, but what I am saying is these are the questions of today's time, and there are, in fact, legitimate empirical, clinical, scientific frameworks that do have many answers, um, maybe not in a direct way, but in a roundabout way. You're sort of able to, and I would say it's a good practice that you need to reach out to these other areas of science to essentially find, if not direct answers, proper, at least at the very least, proper empirical, evidence-based frameworks that help move you towards a more pro-social solution. And of course, it'll be unique to, every individual's and every community's set of circumstances, but it, it's 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 been far, for lack of a better word, it's been high time that we ask this, not just as scientific professionals, but all of us collectively ask, what end are we pursuing efficiency and optimization, right? Is it just to satisfy our own selfish needs and wants and screw everybody else? Or is it because we recognize that in order for us to be successful, we have to lift everybody else up with us? And the only way we can possibly do that is we have long-term planned periods of fasting. And again, the sort of wrap everything up, does it need to be this way where we continue relentlessly consuming? And the answer is absolutely not. We all have a choice in this, and especially organizations that are that exist in some of the most environmentally negatively impactful industries, oil and gas, they absolutely do have a choice. It will take a lot of collaboration. It will be an incredibly painful path to moving towards that more pro-social way of being, but it is worthwhile. Otherwise, the only other outcome, if we continue down this path, is assured mutual self-destruction. There is no two ways about it. So, um, yeah, keep an eye out for this article. I really hope that you get something out of it. I hope this video is successful. And I'm thinking about doing more videos like this, to sort of explain my thought pattern about what was really going on at the time, and what piqued my interest in even creating a article about a certain topic. So, thanks again for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.